Conflict in the eastern DRC has intensified as M23 rebels fight for control over Goma. South African soldiers form part of the United Nations peacekeeping mission. 9 SANDF members have died, along with the Malawian and Uruguayan peacekeepers. For more on the escalating crisis in the DRC, we are now joined by Dr. Faith Mabera. She is an international relations and security analyst. Dr. Mabera, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. I don't know if you've checked on what is happening currently in Goma and whether or not you have an update, but what I saw was a report that the M23 has actually been able to get into Goma. I haven't been able to verify that, but from your knowledge, do you know where the M23 is in relation to that attempt of taking over Goma?
Good morning, Aldrin, and good morning to the viewers. I've also received a couple of reports at this moment, though not formally confirmed, that indeed M23 rebel fighters have been able to enter the Munigi quarter, which is right on the outskirts of Goma, about 9 kilometers. And for all intents and purposes, the reports are that they managed to breach a lot of the defensive line that was set up by UN peacekeeping force MONUSCO alongside some DRC counterparts who are trying to fend off that offensive by the M23. This is, of course, comes amid concerning news also of mass displacement as thousands of inhabitants of that city flee to other areas of safety, obviously worrying about the encirclement of the city. And of course, building on the news that came out of the past 2 days about the fatalities, UN peacekeepers, as well as concerningly 9 South African National Defence Force members who are part of the Summit DRC mission, as well as 2 who are part of the Force Intervention Brigade of MONUSCO. So concerning news all around, it's a very fluid situation on the ground. Things are evolving literally by the hour, but at this point, I think there's a lot of alarm around the fate of Goma.
Yeah, then what should we understand with regards to the urgency of having to deal with what's currently unfolding in the DRC, if indeed that is the truth, that they were able to breach that particular defense line that has been created by the peacekeepers, and also considering their ability to have taken over Sake as well?
So this is actually a very eerie and almost familiar situation. It's almost deja vu of what happened in 2013 under the first offensive, when M23 had risen to prominence and actually managed to encircle Goma, and were eventually defeated militarily in the hands of intense military pressure from MONUSCO at the time, as well as regional forces that managed to push back and fend off that attack. We are not sure whether this will happen at this particular round, especially because of a couple of factors. One being that we know that the recent territorial gains made by the M23 are occurring against the backdrop of a withdrawal of MONUSCO at the request of Congolese authorities. We've seen a phased withdrawal that has taken a period of over a year. So we have a skeleton remnant of peacekeepers of MONUSCO who are essentially in the process of leaving the country and shutting down that mission. So inherently, there's a problem there of a security vacuum being created as we speak. Secondly, is the issue also of the departure East African regional forces that left at the end of 2023, and that vacuum was supposed to be envisaged to be filled by Summit DRC. But the problem that we're having is that Summit DRC seems to be massively outgunned by M23. There have been reports by the panel of experts of the UN, as well as other reports by international experts, that Rwanda has been particularly identified as a key funder, an enabler of the M23 rebel group. And this has created a situation where it seems that there's an asymmetry of forces, and the peacekeepers find themselves in a situation, untenable situation, insofar as militarily combating the M23. So that's the situation on the ground. Of course, we are not ignoring the fact that there is mass displacement. The displacement figures, the influx of refugees is also worsening a humanitarian crisis situation. Goma is particularly key in this case because it's a diplomatic and regional hub for peacekeepers as well as humanitarian workers. So any encirclement of Goma and the takeover of Goma by these rebel forces has potentially spillover effects that could ripple across not only Eastern DRC particularly, but also the neighboring regions that survive on Goma as a key humanitarian hub.
Yeah. The accusation of Rwanda backing the rebels, or even sometimes finding the RDF being part of these operations, the accusation that is being made. So the UK, the United States, as well as France, has condemned Rwanda. South Africa has also come out, our ambassador to the United Nations, saying that there is potential war crimes that active party states could be accused of. And there was a mention once again of Rwanda. Rwanda has denied this, and their ambassador is actually accusing the DRC of pushing for regime change. What should we read into this once again? But what is the solution to this if the accusation against Rwanda is being made time and time again, but Rwanda is still denying this and instead making a counter-accusation that Felix Tshisekedi is behind a possible regime change or pushing for regime change?
The frosty relations between Rwanda and Kigali are not a novel occurrence. I mean, it's decades long of regional tensions, harking back as far back as the First Congo War. So this accusations of mutual destabilization by each party has a long historical arc that goes back to the 90s, especially at the end of the Rwanda genocide. And on one hand, you see Kigali saying that they're in pursuit of national security interests, particularly to really try and neutralize remnants of the FDLR, which is this remnants of the Hutu extremist militia that was responsible for committing the genocide, and that this particular remnant is hostile to the regime in Kigali and seeking to cause destabilization of that regime. So they're putting forward very strong reasons of national security concerns. But on the other hand, you also have the Congolese authorities who are raising the flag in terms of encroachment of their sovereign rights, as well as destabilization of their territory. But in between that, there's also very deep-seated local and national grievances around contestations over land ownership. So this shows the complexity of the layers inherent within the conflict in the Eastern DRC. Not forgetting, of course, that the M23 is just one of over 120 armed groups that are operating within the territory of Eastern DRC, predominantly across DRC, but predominantly Eastern DRC, arguably linked to the conflict, the mineral resources of that territory, also contesting not only for territorial dominance, but also access to a means of production and the lucrative goal of mining, particularly mining sites. So that's the complexity of the situation at hand. But I think it speaks to just how deep-seated the tensions between Kigali and Kinshasa go.
Yeah. What is known about other state actors outside of the African continent who may, by extension, be fueling or even influencing the war that is underway, considering once again that the DRC is so mineral rich and the mining companies continue to operate?
Yes, and that's precisely the point. So the fact that mining operations have continued under the radar against the context of the ongoing conflict speaks to the fact that it only comes to the surface or comes forth when the encroachment or the offensive by the rebels are seen to be threatening diverse mineral interests or concessional operations. So that's I think the crux of the matter. At this particular point in time, it seems like the objectives of the M23 and their alleged Rwandan backers have shifted not only in parallel to territorial expansion and gathering as much Congolese territory as possible, but also particularly ensuring that they have control over the mining sites, which of course feeds into their war efforts and broader political and strategic objectives. So the point being that we're increasingly seeing a regionalization of the conflict in the Eastern DRC, not forgetting that Eastern DRC has also served as a lot of the basis for a lot of offensives and rebel groups who claim to have operational bases in DRC. So altogether creating this theater of instability and this vortex of conflict that's situated in a particularly volatile area.
Yeah. So, Dr. Mabera, of course, one of the reasons that this story is so big is the loss of life with the 9 South African soldiers that were killed were part of the 13 peacekeepers. We're asking our viewers this morning, should South Africa withdraw its troops from the DRC? And I'd love to hear what your opinion around this is. It's a simple yes or no. If you're participating in this poll, how would you vote and what would the reason behind that be?
I think it's complex in that sense. Any decision by a country such as South Africa to deploy troops has to be seen within the context not only of interest, and we can't overlook the fact that South Africa has been a key peace and security actor in the DRC for close to 2 decades, harking back to its first participation in the 1999 UN peacekeeping missions, South Africa's facilitator of talks with the Sun City Accords. So it's been deeply invested in peace and security on the continent, and it's also this idea that with South Africa also playing the role of regional leader, the question that we need to be asking ourselves is, if South Africa withdraws, what would be the consequences down the line? It's a very interesting calculation of not only trade-offs that need to be made at the strategic level, but also inherently the broader calculations insofar as regional stability is concerned.
Thank you so much for your time. Dr. Faith Mabera is international as well as security analyst there.